we can't do it that way anymore. If we continue to do what we've been doing, we're just being blindly stupid as a country, and we're being dominated. But it is fixable.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Healthy Savings Podcast. I'm Sasha Gerbov. I'm your host. I'm one of the founders of Milu Health, and we're joined today by Brian Klepper. Brian, thank you for joining us. You're an analyst of the healthcare space. You've described yourself as a elderly diplomat of the healthcare world. I wouldn't call elderly in there, but you and I have had a few wonderful discussions as we've gotten to know each other about employer-sponsored healthcare and what this world looks like. And I thought it would be fun to have you on board and hear from your experiences and chat. So thanks for joining.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a delight to be here. The question of employer-sponsored healthcare, if I was to say, here's what the biggest mystery of my career has been, it would be the fact that even though employers have carried this incredible healthcare burden for the entire time I've been in the business, for the 35 years, they've never figured out how to work together. And when I say that, I mean collaboratively, not getting together and having coffee together and watching a program, but joining together to leverage their collective purchasing strength to get a better deal in the marketplace and to hold the healthcare industry accountable. They've never done that. And there are a bunch of big organizations that could be moving in that direction, but they've gotten distracted. The employer and union communities have gotten really creamed by this circumstance. I mean, healthcare is the single biggest threat to the national economic security, without question. And there's nothing that shows that it's likely to get better in any meaningful way. The industry has captured the healthcare regulatory process. So, trying to fix it through law probably isn't going to be able to happen, because the whole of Congress has open arms to the lobbying dollars that the industry has, and the industry has more money than anybody else. That says that the path to liberation is in the market, offering better products in the market, better health outcomes, lower costs. But it also says that we may not be able to do anything until we have a collapse of some type. So it's a very dire situation from my perspective. But there are bright spots, and for the last decade, I have focused on those. And I would frame the biggest bright spots to be the fact that we have had a major effort to reimagine what primary care should be and can be. We've got an explosion of organizations that we call point solutions that have sometimes offered new paradigms on how to manage different forms of clinical and financial risk, and they do it way better than the conventional marketplace does. And we've got a situation where the employers are now so frustrated that they're finally willing to consider alternative solutions that their health plans have never been willing to show them. So to my mind, that's all pretty optimistic.
One thing I've heard from some employers is there have been solutions in the past that have broken through, but a lot of them have then not really worked. And you see some employers have point solution fatigue, quote unquote, but also B, not believe that anything can work. Like if I had a dime for everyone that said like you're not going to be able to engage my employees, and I fundamentally believe that you can if you do it right, but we have to prove it and show it.
So what one of the great experiences that I've had in healthcare, and it genuinely has been a great experience. For the last decade, I have been on the hunt to identify and vet very high performing healthcare organizations, and I mean that in very specific terms. So, to my mind, a high performer is an organization that consistently delivers measurably better health outcomes and or lower costs than conventional approaches, and particularly in the high value niches where the money is. And the and so here we're talking about things like management of chronic disease, where 75% of the money is, management of complex disease. Here we're talking about the cancers and neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and rare diseases and so on. Um, Other areas that are very high value are drug spend, management of maternity, cancer, surgery, and so on. And as it turns out, there are organizations out there that really have figured out way better ways to approach these problems. They typically fall into two categories. The first category is those who have developed a new paradigm for managing that niche. And I would put in there organizations like Integrated Musculoskeletal Care out of Florida and Upswing Health out of Connecticut. They have developed a new paradigm on how to assess and manage musculoskeletal conditions. And integrated musculoskeletal care will financially guarantee a 25% reduction in total MSK spend on the patients they touch. That translates to a guaranteed 4 to 6% reduction in total spend. 5% is a big number uh, for a single thing. There are all kinds of companies that are all different out there. There's one of the companies that I work with has developed a better way to make uh, pharmacogenetic testing immediately available and actionable for doctors and patients. Pharmacogenetic testing is cheap. It's about $300 for a one-time lifetime test, and it'll tell the clinician and the patient what drugs they can and cannot metabolize. And in a study that came out in 22 on 30,000 patients, they were all Medicare patients in Kentucky. 5,000 of the 30 had the pharmacogenetic test. 25,000 didn't, and the group that had the pharmacogenetic test over the course of a year spent $2,625 per enrollee per year less than the group that didn't have it. And if we said every Medicare recipient needs to have a pharmacogenetic test, America would save $171
Um,
billion a year off it.
that's huge.
It's a big number.
The pharmacogenetic world is near and dear to my heart. I spent a bunch of years working at a genomics company that did PGX testing as one of the offerings. And I've talked to some PGX companies that were interested in the employer space. The challenge that I've seen specifically in the employer space is like, how do you get in? Like, how do you get the right touch point? Candidly, it's an area that we're trying to solve at Milu. but we've not thought about it for PGX. Have you seen anyone doing that? Because if you can convince a doctor to order it for a patient.
What this company has done is said, send us your data, and we're going to only give the test to patients that are at serious risk for their health. If it were me and it were my company, I'd want everybody to do it because there's going to be there are two big things that a pharmacogenetic test does. It says to the patient, if you're on this drug, you shouldn't be because you can't metabolize it, and so you're wasting the money on the drug, and it's also likely to cause problems for you, and we also don't want you to have an interaction that's going to be problematic, and that those can be fatal. So you'll save a lot of money on those, but it just makes a lot more sense to get somebody on a drug that they are appropriate for. This is one of those things that if everybody costs $300 to have it done, I mean that's a specialty office visit, and it makes sense to invest in that since you only need this test once in your lifetime. To me, the logic has been, let's find the very best provider organizations that we can, or management organizations that we can, um, and get them into place so that we can attack the biggest forms of risk with a lot of confidence. And if we do it across niches, we can easily drive 25 to 40% of total healthcare spend out and get way better outcomes. And I don't think there are a lot of people who disagree with that. One of the issues is, how do you find the companies that are really good as opposed to the Livongos of the world? So that's part of what I spent my energy on, was trying to figure out how to vet companies and do it succinctly and without too much fuss. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there. There are a bunch of people who are now thinking about doing what I've been talking about. The other part to this is that the market is still very much in a fee-for-service mode. So if you say, let's use AI to manage cardiometabolic disease, which is the lion's share of chronic disease. If you go and you try to hawk that to the hospitals, they're going to come back to you and say, now I want to do fewer surgeries. Why? And no, we're not going to do that. And so it's been very difficult to get stuff like that into the market. But if you went to virtually any other country that an advanced society that where everybody's getting care on the government, they're literally in the business of managing risk. They want to do this stuff. We're just blinded by our
it's interesting
ideologies.
I've seen some examples of AI tools getting into hospitals, but pretty much exclusively when they have spent years getting a billing code both approved and paid for, that the hospital can then bill for running the new AI diagnostic, or if it leads to more complex procedures or more expensive tests. And I'm not saying that that's just the system and how it's set up. It's not like the companies out there doing that are, I think, doing something bad or evil. They're developing a new AI technology generally that works and is FDA approved and is great, but 99% of them die in the vine because they don't have a way to live in fee-for-service billing, which sucks because then none of them are going to reduce costs.
The fascinating thing about what I've been doing is I run across new products and approaches that are literally breathtaking. And it always makes me think, if I didn't know about this, there must be a bunch of stuff out there that's great that I don't know anything about. So, for example, there's a company called Sera Prognostics. Sera has developed a blood test for pregnant women. It's administered in week 18, and it consistently it can accurately identify 88% of the babies who will be born preterm. If you know you're going to have a preterm baby, you pull in a maternal and fetal medicine physician and you get them to work on extending the gestational period for an extra week or even 2 weeks. And if you can pull that off, you get a baby that is less vulnerable than they would have been otherwise, and they you improve the quality of their life and the cost of that life for an entire lifetime. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't get any wowier than that, you know? And then there's straightforward, simple stuff. There's a new uh, screen for colorectal cancer that is a blood test. It's a circulating DNA test. So rather than have to, you know, have a gross experience handling stool at home or having a colonoscopy, you can take this blood test and it turns out that the only real innovation that this test has is people are willing to do it because they don't mind getting their blood drawn, but they do mind having a colonoscopy or handling stool. And so rather than having 40% of your 45 and older patients get screened, now you get 90% screened, and you find you get earlier detection. I mean, it's all great. So the challenge has been then, can you get real data showing that a company is doing is getting great results? You got to be able to figure out what it is that they are doing that's differentiated in the marketplace and that allows them to consistently get better results than everybody else. If you can do that, then you're onto something. The current health plan players are not the least bit interested in making healthcare cost less or be better. So what we really need to do is go to the high performing specialty services, the advanced primary care organizations, and get them to work in bundles. And so we have been focused on creating the technology infrastructure to be able to do that. And at the same time, build a new design for business health coalitions to work with so that they work together in the market and they purchase together in the market. And we can drive that with value-based services that will force the market to come down.
You know, my dream is this world where in the future you've got 100 different solutions that are outside of the existing healthcare system that an employer can smartly route people to that are high impact. But it's not going to confuse the hell out of an employee because you're not going to get a PDF on November 17th that lists all those 100 things. I mean, maybe you will in some appendix, but like nobody's ever going to today they don't even know to sign up for, I don't know, vision or dental. I don't even know if you always should sign up for those things, but like that,
Right.
you have to have the solutions. You have to route people to the right solution. And of course, like people have to use the traditional healthcare system in the right way too. Like that doesn't go away. These things supplement it. Cause like if you have cancer, you're going to a great oncologist. Like your app isn't going to be a magical solution to that. You need incredible doctors who are specialists in the things that are most impactful. And I think you need the solutions that go and wrap around that because in our country, we don't have enough doctors and they don't have enough time.
You're exactly right. And we've got 80 years of a bad healthcare system in the rearview mirror. And and we need to acknowledge that. And And we need to decide at some point, sooner would be better, that we can't do it that way anymore. If we continue to do what we've been doing, we're just being blindly stupid as a country, and we're being dominated. But it's it is fixable. Optum made an announcement in November. Optum, which is the largest subsidiary of United, which is the largest healthcare conglomerate, they announced that they now employ more than 90,000 physicians, or 8.5% of the current active physician workforce. That they were focused on getting on being vertically integrated in the U.S. healthcare marketplace. And what they're really saying is we want to corner every market in healthcare that we can. They not only own the physicians and the ambulatory surgical centers and the imaging centers and so on and so forth. They own pretty much a lot of everything. And they want to be able to dictate the utilization, dictate the unit pricing of every service in healthcare, because then they control it all, and they win. For the rest of us, that's not such a great idea. But it's not just Optum. It's every large healthcare organization aspires to that. And so battling that is really tough. And the only way to be effective, I think, is to make an offer to the purchasers, the employers, and the unions that they can't refuse. To offer them a product that guarantees that they're going to pay significantly less and guarantees better health outcomes. And we can do that. There are organizations that can do that now, and every
What do
one of
you
us is hogtied
what do you
by it.
think it takes
I mean,
to make this happen? Like, because if I play your vision back to you go and you find the best solutions out there in specific high cost, high need disease areas that are outside of the traditional healthcare system. You don't go and you change the traditional health plan for an organization, or at least you don't throw it out. You layer on great solutions that sit on top of it that also have performance guarantees. And then you get an employer that says, I'm going to buy that, and I'm going to buy it going at risk. But to do that, all these different solutions have to talk to each other. So how do you make that happen?
so let's say we pull together all these organizations, and they're in management of chronic disease, musculoskeletal, cancer, maternity, the whole list. We bolt on a primary care function. And when I say advanced primary care, what I really mean is a primary care organization that has leveraged its operations to deploy and exert control over risk in every part of the continuum, clinical and financial risk in every part. So in that sense, primary care becomes the control room for the larger healthcare enterprise, and it's got its hands on a lot of data. We're building a new analytics platform, and the analytics platform will watch all the transactions that are going on in the health plan, and it will, within each major niche, we will have a vendor that is a high performer in that, and they've got performance targets, and and the platform will keep track of all that, so that at the end of the day, we'll know what percentage of total healthcare spent was consumed by each particular niche and vendor, how much that vendor was capable of positively impacting that niche, and and what were they capable of guaranteeing as well? And how did all that play out? Because if you don't know those things, there's no way to equitably allocate risk and reward. So we've got that much figured out, we think. But then there's also integrating in with the primary care organization and integrating so that all this is seamless to the patient, to the purchaser, to other referrers, and so on. But this
Yeah.
isn't conceptually hard. It's
You
just
know, what's funny, in our world, we aspire to be an engagement platform that's smart, that uses data, that can go and bring the right thing to the right employee at the right time. Um, and in a perfect world, it all goes through primary care. Like, that's a million times better. Any survey out there says, Americans trust their doctors here, their politicians here, everything else is in between. They're all, their car repair guy maybe here. But physicians are here, and they should be. But the problem is everybody goes to a different doctor. Our system is pretty disparate. So unless you go and introduce an advanced primary care or direct primary care vendor in the middle, you can't go and funnel everything through. You're not going to go to the 15 primary care doctors at Northwestern in Chicago and educate them all about it. With primary care, I think you can get there, and I could be wrong on this, but my hunch is the percent of employees that you're going to get to that is always, it's going to have some kind of cap where people will go and change their PCP to go into a great market. So at least for us, what I'd love to do, and we're not yet working with a ton of groups that do this through DPC. We are working with some groups where we're already kind of steering, but I'd love to create a system where ultimately we get people to the DPC if they're not today, or the APC. And then for everyone else, we go and we try to route, and there will always be a drop off, right? But we try to route folks to the right thing if they're not already being routed by, an amazing primary care solution. And I'm with you. I think something like this could work and needs to work and will work. None of it's going to be fast.
I used to be an owner of an on-site clinic primary care company. And we had a bunch of clinics, and I learned a lot about the management of risks. But what ended up happening was that there were a group of very strong primary care clinic companies, and they were headed toward much more aggressive management of risk, which is the keys to the kingdom. And then private equity got involved, and they began to buy into these companies, and then they dominated how they would spend money, and almost to a one, they all stopped managing risk. They stopped investing in the infrastructure that was required to manage the risk, and you can see this actually in the DPCs, in the direct primary care organizations. Most of those docs were unhappy. They were working for hospitals. They were being forced to refer in for everything. They didn't think they were practicing good medicine. And then they pulled out, and they basically became concierge docs, but they didn't have any tools. They didn't invest in the tools. And so they can't do better than X. They just can't get beyond that. So one of the challenges for us is that we have to find ways to arm those people so that they can be great, much better doctors. And in the process, we all grow together. But to my mind, the worksite primary care clinic sector has squandered an opportunity, because they could be the ones who were really demonstrating that you can easily knock a third off of the total cost of healthcare. What you're talking about, for example, with engagement, we know that people respond to certain incentives. And Walmart got serious with this like 8 or 9 years ago, where they said, look, we've done the math, we've done the analytics, and here are your best places to go if you need a transplant or you need, whatever you need. Here are the best places to go. And if you go there, if you go to Mayo for your transplant, a quarter of the time they're going to send you home and say that you never needed a transplant in the first place. You're going to get way better care and it's going to cost way less money. And if you want to go to someplace else, you can, but you pay half. I mean, it's parental, but if if somebody is running the health plan, they need to be in a position to tell you, we've looked, here are the good ones. We want you to use those. If you go to those, you don't
Yeah.
pay anything. These are solvable problems, I
Who
think,
do you
is the
think are the
reality of it at this
employers
point.
who are gonna be the early adopters for what you're talking about? Is it the big jumbos? Is it
No. And one of the problems with working with jumbo employers is that they've got armies of lawyers who make sure that whatever you want them to do that's controversial or a little bit outside the box, they don't want any of that, because that's just disruption. So they can't get them to do anything against the industry that's been robbing them, you know, openly for a long time. But there are a bunch of organizations out there that are led by people now who are very out of the box. I mean, look at
Mhm.
Chris Deacon, if you know who she is, who's an attorney, was running the state of New Jersey employee health plan, very progressive and very aggressive in terms of protecting her organization's interests. Look at Cora Upsall, who's running 32BJ. Those kinds of organizations are led by people who will go, yeah, let's let's use the guys who are showing that they are consistently the best.
Makes total sense.
One of my buddies, who I think I introduced you to, Michael Millinson, wrote an article, I don't know, 15 years ago in Health Affairs, and it said, the Great American Healthcare Collapse. What's taking so long? Um, and and that's how I feel. I mean, we've been singing the same song for my whole career.
I don't know. I'm not an expert on predicting the future of cataclysmic events. I wouldn't bet on a collapse. Like, I would just bet on the same thing that keeps happening, which is year on year high single digit, low double digit, or in some or many cases high double digit percent increases, and it just eats away. And like, the system's not going to blow up. I fundamentally don't think that. It's too ingrained, right? Like, the hospital is still going to be there, and it'll lose money next year or gain money next year, but it'll have a big piggy bank and endowment. And somehow, everybody who lost $100 million 2 years ago and it made all the headlines, they're still there, with the exception of small regional hospitals who absolutely are not. And like, that's a crisis. So I think it'll just keep getting worse, right? Like, wait times will be longer for patients, out of pockets will be higher, wages will stagnate, healthcare as a percent of GDP will keep going like this, the same as higher education, and everything else will go like that. And it will just suck more, right? And there will be bright spots. Like, we lead the world in cancer drugs developed. GLP-1s, at least one of the two big companies is here, and like, we lead the world in scientific publications, and most of the vaccines came from, like, there's great stuff. It just we don't have a system that can afford it, and a population that can afford it.
That is all true, and at some moment, I mean, look at where we are now after the pandemic. I mean, during the pandemic, we had tremendous clinician burnout. We couldn't we the supply chain was disrupted. Labor went away because people couldn't stand it anymore, and they left. And objectively, when you looked at the hospital systems, for example, um, labor costs went up 28% in 3 years. Supply chain costs went up 38%. And then the hospitals went on a campaign and said, we need more money. What the hospitals did was they went to the payers, Medicare and the commercial payers, and they said, we got to have more money. And the commercial payers went to the purchasers and they said, you got to pay more. And a bunch of those purchasers who were wealthy companies, the Intels of the world and the IBMs, those kinds of companies, they went, yeah, whatever, we make so much money that what we pay in healthcare is not a big deal. But when they went to a Walmart or somebody in retail or food service or manufacturing, they'd say we don't have any more money, and that's where people are gonna break away. School districts up against a hard stop. So we're gonna have something like this sooner or later, and it's gonna be ugly.
Thank you, Brian. This has
so thank you, Sasha.
Been really, really great. I hope we do it again someday. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to Healthy Savings by Milu Health. If you would like more information about any of the topics you have heard today, we would love for you to get in contact with us. Find us on the web at miluhealth.com.